I was like, what kind of podcast do you think? Hey everyone, this is Bart Gant coming at you live with Seth Kalkman via the video conference platform that is yet to be revealed to you. We just wanted to say, sit down, buckle up, prepare to be deconstructed and reconstructed in this time um, of where we're going here. It's going to be awesome.
Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy. We're getting started. This is the first episode of Constructive. My name is Seth. I am bringing along my best friend. His name is Bart. Introduce yourself a little bit, Bart.
My name is Bart. I'm glad to be here for the kickoff of this podcast endeavor.
So we'll give some more background as we go along, but basically, the podcast is called Constructive. Definition of constructive that I've found is serving to improve, advance, or be helpful. And that's just something even in my life outside of construction that is important to me. That's one of the reasons I brought Bart on. He does have plenty of construction experience, but he's not necessarily in the construction industry at the moment. But I bounce all my ideas off him, and he's been a constructive personality in my life. Whether it comes to criticism, I just really appreciate when I have friends who speak truth to me in love, and stuff that is constructive criticism is the way that we grow. So that's my vision for this podcast, is just to be a part of a community that wants to be helpful to each other, encourage each other, and then also build things that are what I'm calling constructive, helpful to the community, helpful to our clients. And I just think there's a future where the image of construction managers and contractors can change. I think right now, a lot of times people think, oh, construction just always takes way too long, and contractors are good old boys and they're backwards and
Plan for a 20% margin creep and they'll get you on the change orders and all the.
Right. So that's the number one topic of this podcast. The number two is I'm really interested in technology, especially with where we're at right now. It feels like it's rapidly growing. Technology is just going into a future that even though I've always been kind of on the cutting edge of technology, I feel behind already. I mean, what AI is doing, I just watched a podcast with Lex Friedman and Mark Zuckerberg where they're having a virtual meeting where they've got digital twins of themselves talking to each other. And I mean, I think that's going to change the construction industry too. I think we'll see things like AI, robots, and digital twins of buildings really change things here coming up. So I'm excited to try to bring on people who know a lot more about that stuff than me and learn from them. Let's start off with kind of my background. Bart, feel free to probe me on this stuff, but I would just say I grew up interested in construction. Legos were my favorite toy. And I think I wanted to be an architect. I started drawing floor plans when I was in junior high, I think, and ended up in the construction management major at Cal Poly and just loved that degree. It was very hands-on and it felt like enough analytical stuff and enough creative stuff too. My first jobs out of college were in the forensic niche of construction management. So figuring out how buildings are failing, who's to blame for how much money, why construction projects go over budget and out of their schedule. So I got to experience a lot of what happens bad in construction projects. And I am now trying to take that information into new construction and avoid those pitfalls. And I think part of that too, I got into the creative stuff. I started doing photography and video, and now I've combined that as well into my career. So I'm finding ways to use my remote pilot certification from the FAA to fly drones over buildings and take pictures. And hopefully soon we'll be surveying and getting all kinds of useful data from drones and integrating that with 3D models and doing like virtual design and construction where you can pretty much build a project on a computer before you even build it in real life, and find all the potential problems that you might run into, or maybe not all, but hopefully a lot of them. Bart, do you want to give any background or what you think about those topics? You're an entrepreneur now. You're building businesses yourself. What do you think about this?
Well, I think first that with Constructive and your background, you have a very glorious view of construction. I just realized, and I'm curious if the majority of people out there, listeners, hold your same perspective of joint, because I was, as you're speaking, I'm reflecting like, oh, I grew up early elementary age, picking up nails and throwing them in 5-gallon buckets on job sites, and tying rebar, and it was not glorious, right? Like I remember I had to earn the privilege to use the big rolling magnet that picks up the nails. Like you had to pick them up by hand before before it became proficient at cleanup job site, before you're allowed to do that. And met a lot of characters along the way at a very young age, probably younger than, actually certainly younger, because I have talked to my dad about this, where sometimes he's like, I don't think it was the best idea for me to leave you at that job site, but it's because my dad was a builder growing up. So
you learned a lot, I bet.
Yeah, right. But it's funny. I learned enough to where when I went to begin a formal education, I didn't want to do construction because I always saw that as like a fallback plan. But to this day, my dad still swings a hammer every day. He loves it. He's gonna do it till the day he dies, right? So he loves it. Yeah, and as much as I studied other things, I always end up being around, even in recreation, I end up being around like facility management and facility development and things like that. And then after that, I even went to spend some time building. I was in outdoor adventure, but then I was like designing and building ropes courses, right? So there was, as much as I tried to get away from it, I ended up doing it. And then I ended up working at a commercial contractor for a while. And then I went into the tech space and worked on the business side of tech, managing contractors and real estate portfolio stuff, which had to do with construction and facilities and new builds and tenant improvements and all change, all that fun stuff. And I remember laughing at myself many times thinking, why do I can't keep ending up in this similar space, no matter how much I try to get away from it to do something that I think is more savvy, more cool, whatever, but that's still how it operates. Now what I mean today.
You've seen both sides then. You've seen kind of the client view of how people who are hiring construction professionals to get the things they need built, and you've also seen being hired to fix some asphalt or whatever, or hammer a nail when you were in high school. But
well, I would say too, I think most of my experience I've described as a translator between the actual like the person swinging the hammer, the builder, the super, whoever it is, and the finance person, the bean counter, like the from the boardroom to the construction site. Because I literally within 2 weeks one time went from walking job sites with superintendents stepping out of 10-wheelers to talk to me, and 2 weeks later I was sitting in boardrooms with a button up and slacks. Right, like that was when I shifted roles between companies one time.
Then that kind of leads me into, let's talk about this, because you and I have talked probably for 15, 20 years, and a lot of our phone calls end up being about, hey, I'm really trying to be a force for good in the company I'm at or in the industry I'm at. Now you've got like 5 different jobs and you're trying to do it in each different segment of your life. Like, let's be valuable to the client. Let's make some money for ourselves. Let's make some money for everybody. Let's make it a win-win. That's like my biggest goal in life, is how can business be many wins for everybody? Nobody loses. I know this is way idealistic and sometimes things don't go that smoothly, but I'll just give a brief background to one of the specific stories I have where I was really trying to be helpful for a company. And I noticed that sometimes there's pushback even when you're trying to be constructive. One of my early jobs in construction, actually, you were at the same company at the time, but they were still doing most of their work on paper. So there were computers around, but most of the job forms and stuff were on paper. So they had trailers full of documents. They go back years and years and years, and one of the first tasks they asked me to do is scan everything and get it onto digital. And so I started doing this. I did about a week's worth and calculated out how much this company was paying me to scan things 8 hours a day, extrapolated how much I had gotten done with how much seemed to be remaining in the trailer full of documents, and realized that they were going to spend X amount of dollars on me scanning things for the next month. And I did some research and found a company who could scan it all, digitize it all, tag it all with metadata that would make it really easy to search and stuff like that. And it was actually cheaper for them to get a third party to do that work than have me do it. And it ended up being the company just wanted me to do it because they couldn't quite figure out what else to have me do. So that was one of those times where I was like, is this really how work is going to go? Like, I'm just going to come up with a way for this company to save money and give me an opportunity to do something that's a little bit more interesting than scanning pages of documents all day. And I got resistance for that. And I've seen that throughout my career. I've also seen companies who really want the opinions of their new employees. But yeah, do you have any stories like that or insight into why do we get into these jobs where it feels like we're just trying to be constructive for our employers, and it's not always met with, oh, that's awesome, keep doing that?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I mean, it's interesting too. I wonder if I would think or respond the same as I did then now to that concept, because owning and operating a business and having visibility to those things is very different than being an employee in that role, wanting to be constructive. And even too, specifically in the construction industry, how it's kind of cyclical, right? With seasons and with economy and things like that. I had a friend right now who last week had a contractor call him to redo his driveway. He gave him a quote a month ago, quoted him $57,000 to redo his driveway with concrete. That same contractor just called him this week and said, hey, I'll cut you a deal because I want to keep my crew busy and I don't want to lose them to different builders, right? And so the guy says, I'll do your driveway for $40,000. He came down from 57 to 40, like 30, he came down 30% roughly to keep his crews busy in a time where he as an owner might be seeing what's coming in the pipeline project wise, when stuff's going to go, and isn't going to have a lot of work for them and might lose them. And so I'm curious, because I don't know all the criteria of that time too, if it was, I can't remember what time of year it was. I can't remember what season it was. And if maybe it was like, well, we don't know what else to have you do right now, but in 2 months, we're going to have lots what we need to do. Right.
That's a great point. And I think too, sometimes I'm not seeing things from what the owner's perspective. Like you said, sometimes you do just have to keep employees busy. I also think, like, when it comes to adapting, or is that the right word? Adopting new technology. It's kind of like companies, especially some of these older construction companies that are family owned and the owner's probably getting ready to retire, but doesn't want to let go. If I say, let's start using drones to map the project, the owner might be like, we don't really want to be on the cutting edge of technology. Or maybe we want to be close to the cutting edge. We don't want to be the bleeding edge. We don't want to be the ones killing ourselves because we're trying to adopt too much new technology.
Yep. Or putting all the expense into figuring it out, so then people in the future, instead of, without the idea of being first to market, right? Yeah. Then they're looking at, oh, it's just more expense. What's the return? And especially, I mean, you and I have met many contractors who have been grinding for 30, 40 years to keep projects going, keep people busy and on track and on budget. And they haven't thought about a succession plan even. Like, what am I going to do with this baby that I've built over decades now that, like, I want to stop? And how do I let go of the reins for that to something new?
And what's it going to look like when I'm gone? Are they going to change everything and it won't really be my baby anymore? So, yeah.
Especially when you be like, you're kind of your bread and butter. You're like, well, we've been doing this for decades. It's provided for our family. It's provided for other people's families. Why would we flip the script on something that's unknown to them?
Let's talk a little bit too about, so I mentioned it to you the other day on the phone. I'm curious to see what kind of stuff, how the construction industry will start to use things like AI and robots, because some of that scares me. I'm like, is this going to take away? I don't know about labor jobs. I don't know if robots are going to be hammering nails soon, but I think you and I have talked about there's like kind of when somebody comes into the construction industry, the project engineer job is kind of like get this paperwork to that person, and it's kind of like
track
the
this
kind of job I could see an AI doing all of. And so what does that mean for construction management majors graduating college today? Are they gonna, maybe they won't have to do some of the boring work that you and I did early on in our career, but maybe that means they need to think about like what value a new employee has as AI might start to take over some of those roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because the amount that a construction company could save just in material, like in procurement, if you don't have to have a crew driving around to different, like lumber yards to try to find things, or hardware stores to try to find things that should have just been on site, and that idle time of a job.
Right.
That's
Yeah, robots too are doing like the work of survey. People seen, I mean, you can send a robot into a building. You can fly a drone over a building and from that create a completed 3D model of the building. You can have it do inspections. You can have it find mold. You can do infrared camera on a drone and find water intrusion. You can get as-built information from a drone now. All that stuff is really exciting.
Even like what we're doing right now, just virtual stuff, right? Like that was when the whole world shut down and was emerging back out of that, permit departments, and even to get like inspections and finals on things. The fact that that could be done virtually, either through like a video medium or through just photos.
Right.
Huge, right? Now you're not waiting 6 months for an inspector to come out, because that one inspector can just sit at their desk with a monitor and inspect multiple jobs versus driving between them. And
that's an interesting future too. Are we going to have a future where inspectors actually don't need to be on site? I mean, they might
and then
have a camera.
As crazy as this sounds, maybe with like big data and machine learning, right? Then AI is even able to become an inspector. Like AI, after having enough images of what passes inspection and what doesn't, then it knows what outlets should look like, or what electric junction box should look like, or what framing should look like. So you don't need to get because someone can just,
how do we make that AI make sure that it is constructive? Help, because sometimes that AI might be skewed towards something we didn't really intend, like complete accuracy or perfection. Like one of the greatest things about margin, you never build it exactly to design. It's impossible to take a set of plans and make the built environment look exactly 100% like the set of plans. That's impossible, at least for humans. I don't even know if a robot could do it. Maybe someday, as they're 3D printing houses as well. But so what would the AI inspector say about something that is off? You put tolerances in. I guess you tell the AI if it's within 1/8 of an inch, that's within the tolerance, it passes inspection. So maybe that's an easy problem, but there might be other problems I see that could come up. I just hope that there's human oversight to AI, because I guess my worry is like the AI makes all its decisions based on data. That's that human element that could get
the judgment. And that's with vehicles, we're seeing that, right? For people who are driving autonomous vehicles, those vehicles only know how to identify a school bus because of the amount of images those cameras have seen of school buses and a lake. But now when the vehicle has to determine between the lake or the school bus to crash into, that's where the human element, like you can't write an algorithm.
Yeah, that's true. Well, this has been beautiful. I don't want to take up too much more time. This is just the first episode. Looking forward to finding people. If you want to talk with me about being constructive in the construction industry, please let me know. You can email me, seth.kalkman@sixthdimensionpm.com. Try to get a hold of me somehow. And Bart too, I hope, are you willing to come on a few times in the future? Maybe
and if you,
the special guest of the future.
If there's anything I can add constructively to anybody or to this endeavor here, you can find me through this podcast.